Doamnelor, domnilor, bine v-am găsit, urmăriți Lumea Diplomatică. În următoarele 25 de minute intrăm în culisele negocierilor și acordurilor ce pot rescrie istoria Europei în următorii 50 de ani. Relația președintelui Donald Trump cu Alianța Nord-Atlantică a fost mereu una specială. În primul său mandat a criticat aliații, însă în acest fel a reușit să-i determine să aloce sume importante pentru apărare. În acest al doilea mandat, președintele Donald Trump și o parte din administrația sa pun la îndoială solidaritatea aliaților. Însă, în acest fel, prin poziții diferite, NATO devine mai puternică în fiecare zi. În continuare, urmăriți un interviu în exclusivitate cu fostul ambasador al Statelor Unite în Ucraina, care vorbește despre provocările de securitate din regiune, dar și despre cum Alianța Nord-Atlantică poate deveni mai puternică. Totodată, România e un membru cheie al NATO care își aduce contribuția în fiecare zi la securitatea alianței. Your Excellency, it's a great honor to have you at Lumea Diplomatică. What role do you believe Romania can play in shaping the future of European security architecture?
Well, it's a big and important question because Romania occupies such a strategically important geography, but it's also a country which over many years has been pursuing exactly the strategies that the United States has recommended in order to achieve energy security. So Romania, of course, benefits from having a very mature civil nuclear sector. I'm excited about the progress that I'm hearing about on this visit with the NuScale SMR project, for instance. It has a large hydropower resource. It has Europe's largest gas resource. Very few people in the United States realize that one of the significant gas resources that Europe can lean on as you phase out Russian molecules is right here in Romania. This is also a country that's made a lot of investments into renewables, into wind, into solar, into battery storage, now offshore wind. And then finally, Romania occupies a very strategic geography for connectivity. The vertical corridor to bring gas from Greece northward into Central Europe, proposals for new high voltage energy transmission lines, and the connectivity that comes from being a Black Sea state.
How can smaller and medium-sized countries like Romania ensure their voices are heard on the global diplomatic stage?
That's a very, very big question. I will say I think Romania punches above its weight, and we are in a very positive moment in terms of perceptions of Romania in Washington. I said to our new U.S. ambassador, Ambassador Nyberg, that he's taking on a really interesting job because Romania's own sense of itself is shifting. It's also true that when the war in Ukraine comes to an end, and it will come to an end, the geopolitical heart of Europe will have shifted to the south and to the east. So Romania becomes very important. And then also for Ukraine, which, again, a big country, future member of the European Union, one of the world's largest grain producers, because of the occupation of Crimea, the occupation of the Azov coast and the ports there, connectivity through this Black Sea, the Western Black Sea region, is going to remain vitally important. So there's an opportunity for Romania's ports and logistics structures as well. I was just listening to my friend Commissioner Gigi Costas talking about his focus on enhanced rail connectivity, for instance, throughout the Black Sea littoral region, the Western Balkans. So Romania has a lot of tools to elevate its voice in a very crowded international environment.
How do you think NATO should evolve to remain effective in the current context?
So, of course, Romania has been a strong NATO ally. I saw that myself when I was U.S. ambassador in Ukraine, and NATO forces in Romania played an important backstop role, but also even more so when I was ambassador in Greece. And I was there during the full-scale invasion in 2022. and the critical role that NATO and NATO facilities in Romania provided in terms of air defense, in terms of air superiority, the Aegis ashore, missile defense facilities. Romania is a key NATO ally, has demonstrated time and again its capacity, but also, as I said earlier, occupies a very strategic geography.
What could Russia bring to the negotiating table, especially as support for Ukraine waves in some European countries?
I think the key on Russia is not going to bring anything to the negotiating table other than a strategic decision to end its unlawful invasion of a sovereign Ukrainian state. I think our approach really since my time in Kyiv as ambassador and the invasion of Crimea in 2014 has focused on raising the cost to the Kremlin of its actions. We have been successful across multiple U.S. administrations in maintaining a unified international front that is more important than ever. I am not naive. I understand that Putin has gotten an economic benefit from the recent increase in oil prices, but I also see extensive evidence that his military strategy is now exhausted. The front line is essentially frozen. One of the largest militaries in the world has been held at bay by the Ukrainian military, even for a year and a half without significant U.S. military assistance. Ukraine has held its ground because it has innovated so fast on digital battlefields, on drone systems, on air defense systems, and it really has transformed the strategy and tactics of national defense, and all of us now have lessons to learn from the Ukrainians.
What do you believe Russia's true objectives are in this moment?
Oh, it's very simple. I mean, from the beginning, Putin's objective has been to put a client regime in Kyiv. He wants Belarus in a country of 45 million people. The great irony is that everything that Putin has done since February of 2022 has made that objective more unachievable. He has unified Ukrainian society against Russia in a way that has never been seen before. Even the latest attacks through this terrible, just concluded winter, you see how old babushka, who had an emotional attachment to life in the Soviet Union, blamed Putin for creating all of this human misery. There is no going back, and this is the great irony. What Putin wants, a client regime in Kyiv, he will never have. He can't achieve it. So he's forced to rely on brute military force, but that strategy is very, very expensive to his military, to his economy, and it simply doesn't offer a pathway for him to achieve what has been his strategic objective, I think, really since the first day of the full-scale invasion.
How do Russian intelligence service operate in Europe, and what lessons has the US learned from their activities?
So I'm very proud of the fact that during my time as ambassador in Greece, the Greek government, for instance, took very aggressive action against Russian intelligence officers. This happened during the first Trump administration, and you saw a series of coordinated steps across NATO and the European Union to expel Russian intelligence officers. There's a much more difficult operating environment for Russian intelligence services. This has also been this disastrous war, and the toll that has taken on Russian society, of course, has been a boon for recruitment. I suspect that that applies to every intelligence service, including the Romanian one. You have a lot of Russians who look at this and say, this is crazy, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And then finally, we all have seen the extraordinary intelligence capacity of the Ukrainians. Attacks like Operation Spiderweb, the attack on the Russian strategic bomber fleet, demonstrate how effective the SBU and the Ukrainian services have been in penetrating Russia's system, precisely because its system is so corrupt at its roots.
So the corruption is the main problem of the Russian intelligence service now?
Corruption, penetration, and disillusionment. I mean, remember For the first years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Russian government, including President Medvedev, were advancing the idea of prosperity, integration with the West, economic opportunity. That's not what Putin is selling anymore. Now he's selling this nostalgic vision of Russian imperial glory, but people aren't buying it.
Relația dintre România și Statele Unite este descrisă adesea ca un parteneriat strategic. Dincolo de această formulă diplomatică, merită să ne întrebăm ce înseamnă acest lucru concret. În primul rând, înseamnă securitate. În timp, România a devenit un punct important pe harta militară a Statelor Unite, mai ales după momentul aderării la Alianța Nord-Atlantică. Prezența americană în baza de la Mihail Cogălnicianu, rotațiile de trupe, dar și prezența de la Deveselu sunt dovezi concrete ale parteneriatului esențial dintre România și Statele Unite ale Americii, un parteneriat care funcționează foarte bine. Dar relația nu se reduce la componenta militară. Există cooperare în energie, investiții, dialog politic constant. România este percepută la Washington ca un aliat stabil, iar asta contează într-o regiune care nu este întotdeauna previzibilă. În același timp, această relație depinde mult și de direcția politicii americane. În ultimii ani, inclusiv în perioada administrației Donald Trump, am văzut o abordare mai directă, uneori mai critică, legată de contribuțiile aliaților și de modul în care funcționează parteneriatele. Asta ridică o întrebare importantă. Cât de mult depinde această relație de cine se află la Washington? Pentru România este o miză foarte clară. Nu e vorba doar despre a avea o relație bună, ci despre securitate, stabilitate, prosperitate și mai mult decât atât, poziționare strategică. Într-un context complicat, cu tensiuni în regiune și cu un război la graniță, parteneriatul țării noastre cu Statele Unite ale Americii devine indispensabil. What are the biggest security challenges facing the Black Sea region today, and how can countries like Romania contribute to long-term stability?
So the biggest challenge is an aggressive Russia, which is bent on conquering Ukraine, but clearly will not be satisfied with that. I mean, the Baltic. I was in Scandinavia this winter. You see there the level of concern and the recognition that Ukraine has to be successful in its defense, because if Ukraine is not strong, Europe will not be safe. Obviously, Putin continues to have aspirations for the Baltic republics. I remember in 2022, when the full-scale invasion began, talking to Romanian counterparts. There was a very clear understanding among our Romanian allies at that point that if Putin was successful in his objective of conquering Ukraine, Romania would find itself having a border with a hostile Russia. And in many ways, you already do because of Russia's occupation of Crimea. So your waters butt right up against the Russian Navy. And that means we all have to invest more in defense. We have to invest more in modernization of our military. And as I said, the war in Ukraine has clearly demonstrated both the vulnerabilities that the Russian military has suffered from, but also the importance for all of us of investing in drone capabilities, in electronic warfare capabilities, in air defense capabilities.
How can we stop Putin?
I think we have to keep raising the cost. We have to be resolute in the enforcement of sanctions. We have to stick to Europe's determination to have a full phase-out of Russian energy by 2027. And we have to make very clear to the Kremlin and to all the Kremlin's enablers that there's no shortcut, that there's no going back to the future, and that we are prepared to support Ukraine as long as it takes.
To what extent can diplomacy still work today when more and more leaders rely on a policy of force?
So all wars, all conflict ends through diplomacy. That has been a law of history. The question is how long it takes to get there. I think the skill that middle powers demonstrate in navigating some of these military confrontations is going to be even more important in the years ahead, especially at a time when traditional national security institutions have become less effective than they were historically in terms of mitigating conflict.
Ca să înțelegem unde este NATO astăzi, merită să ne întoarcem puțin în timp. Alianța a fost creată în anul 1949, într-un moment în care lumea ieșea dintr-un conflict mondial și se pregătea pentru un nou tip de provocare, războiul rece. Ideea era una simplă și foarte puternică. Un atac asupra unui aliat este un atac asupra tuturor. Zeci de ani, NATO a fost în primul rând o structură de descurajare în fața Uniunii Sovietice. După anii 90 însă, mulți s-au întrebat dacă mai este la fel de relevantă. Nu doar că a rămas relevantă, dar s-a extins și s-a adaptat, inclusiv prin primirea unor state din Europa de Est, cum este și România. Apoi a venit momentul care a schimbat totul, războiul din Ucraina. Dintr-o dată, NATO nu mai este doar despre teorie pe hârtie sau despre strategie, ci despre o realitate concretă care se află chiar la granița Alianței Nord-Atlantice. În același timp, în Statele Unite a apărut o dezbatere în spațiul public privind rolul NATO. Donald Trump a pus sub semnul întrebării în repetate rânduri cât de echitabil este efortul între aliați și cât ar trebui să investească fiecare stat în propria apărare. Această discuție nu a dispărut. Din contră, ea revine constant și ridică o întrebare esențială. Cât de solidă este pe termen lung această alianță bazată pe solidaritate?
How does the US view Romania allowing its bases to support operations related to Iran, and what does it mean for Romania's security?
So, as I said, Romania has been a stalwart NATO ally through many years, through Republican and Democratic administrations. I have no doubt that that's going to continue. But Romania also occupies a very challenging geography, so you benefit from your NATO membership. And I think what Romania needs to do is to continue to make the investments that you're already making in your own national defense, but then also help others in NATO to understand why it is so important that you're doing so and why it's so important that Ukraine should be successful in the defense of its sovereignty.
What will the global security situation and the balance of power look like in 5 years?
Oh, I can't tell you what it looks like in 5 months, given the pace of recent developments. I mean, I just think about 2026. We've had the crisis over Greenland. We have the abduction of Venezuela's president, and now we have the war in the Gulf. I think one thing that's clear is that the international system is becoming more volatile, and it's exactly that volatility that means that we have to invest in the institutions that help to protect and maintain our values.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Diplomația este poate cea mai subtilă formă de putere, aceea de a preveni conflictele înainte ca ele să înceapă. Așa cum spunea Henry Kissinger, diplomația este arta de a restrânge puterea. Iar într-o lume tot mai tensionată cum e cea în care trăim astăzi, această artă este nu doar relevantă, ci esențială. Sunt Vlad Ungar și vă mulțumesc că ați urmărit Lumea Diplomatică. Ne revedem săptămâna viitoare.